Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my personal podcast tour of the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Dr. Black, Mr. Hyde, 1976. After Blaxploitation's varying success with the Blackula films, and then the embarrassingly poor Blackenstein, the director of Blackula, William Crane, along with Dimension Pictures, gave audiences a transmutation of another universal icon in Dr. Black, Mr. Hyde. It's fitting that the studio chose the Jekyll and Hyde story, as the resulting film has the split personality of many from the genre. Movies that earnestly want to represent the black community as a weapon of some integrity amidst the crowd-pleasing, while simultaneously shooting itself in the foot. Whilst its tone suggests a knowing humour, time and again characters are drawn with positive attributes, and then the script delivers a face-palming error of representation that undoes the good intentions. Dr. Black, Mr. Hyde overall has relatively decent production values. Not that you'd know it from the beginning. Dr. Pride, Black Pride, a hint of the political conscience attempted, played by Bernie Casey, spends most of his work time at a hospital staffed apparently by just 2 orderlies, 2 nurses, and only him as the MD on duty. Casey had a long career on screen following 8 years in NFL American football, appearing in all genres from Guns of the Magnificent Seven, roles for Scorsese and John Landis, namely Boxcar Bertha and Spies Like Us, to TV sci-fi in Deep Space Nine, to name but a few. Pride starts off either weighed down by the ennui of unfulfilled life, or it's Casey's possible resignation about the woeful material in the opening visitor tour scene. Certainly the character is making the best of things, as he moonlights part-time, sharing his skills for free at the local free clinic and thrift shop. Although his prostitute friend Linda, Marie O'Henry, feels he is not being true to his people. The only time you're around black people is when you're down here clearing your conscience. To be fair, Pride probably deserves this for 2 reasons. Firstly, the poor girl is unnecessarily topless in the scene, where all he needs to perform is a stethoscope check on her breathing from the back and a cursory, inexplicable jiggle of her pelvis. The producer's crass bid for populism warps Malcolm X's call to mobilization into tits by any means necessary. Secondly, he's just insulted her by stating the obvious about her own work. Obviously, prostitution's not the healthiest job to have. Linda tries to dignify being a hooker as a self-empowered choice, rather than lowering herself to be someone's minimum-wage toilet cleaner. This is meant as an admirable moment of social realism, but any realism for sex workers is poorly represented later when one of her prostitute friends decries the slow week as being bad for business. And because I'm horny too, as though that's another reason why she would resort to it. Privately, the not exactly good doctor is less of a saint than his altruistic slumming suggests. He's been testing a secret serum on lab animals that turns their fur pigmentation white. However, it also turns them into savage beasts. Knowing the limitations of his rats and guinea pigs, he decides he must upgrade to a human factor. No prizes for guessing where there's a plentiful supply of those nearby. It isn't long before a female patient is wheeled in sans next of kin, and before you can say Hippocratic oath, he's injected her with the drug. Soon she develops the albino skin, pale eyes, and whitened hair reminiscent of Rosalind Cash in The Omega Man, who by pure coincidence plays Pride's colleague Dr. Billy Worth here. The impatient patient attacks a nurse before changing back into normal human appearance. Incidentally, the prosthetic makeup in the film is by effects maestro Stan Winston, of Terminator, Jurassic Park, and Aliens fame. Clearly, he also helped those less fortunate than himself. Pride's conscience thus far doesn't bother him, despite Billy's appeals. I don't know where I'm going to get another patient, he ponders, staring off into the distance in a meaningful, poised close-up like a bad soap opera performer. Eventually, he opts to get high on his own stash and subjects himself to the serum. As the effect kicks in, he writhes in agony, or seemingly indigestion, and rises up to reveal the same facial changes as his human guinea pig. With the added heavy Neanderthal brow, The combined result on him is reminiscent of Lou Ferrigno's Incredible Hulk of 2 years earlier. This is Hyde with a difference, though. Rather than simply being Pride's bestial alter ego added to his primitive super strength and rage, he retains his civilized self's articulacy and displays a nifty line in flamboyant martial arts, complete with Bruce Lee-style cawing. Pride Hyde gets to flex his newly acquired skills on a trio of street pimps. Not the last time in the film we see examples of this, by now dated, caricature of entrepreneurialism. Meanwhile, inside the Moonlight Lounge Club, another posturer by the name of Silky parades his top hat and cane stereotype. He's fooling no one, though. Underneath his Mac preening, he's a snivelling inadequate who gets his ass kicked not only by a threatening mobster, but literally so by one of his own girls. Enter the Doctor, who proceeds to beat up all the thugs in the bar before transforming back just in time in the parking lot to avoid being identified. The writer Lawrence Woolner, who later went on to co-found New World Pictures with Roger Corman, feels the need to reinforce Pride's virtuous credentials by showing him slipping money to a hard-up mother in the hospital who cannot afford to pay for her son's drugs. Maybe he's trying to pay off his latent conscience because it still doesn't inhibit him in an argument with Billy from continuing his experiments, and a vendetta against the pimping fraternity. We soon discover from a date with Linda why Pride makes such a personal crusade of erasing these ghetto lowlifes and why he has such an interest in her welfare. His alcoholic mother struggled to raise him whilst working as a cleaner to the rich, often leaving him in the care of hookers. This is Bernie Casey's best scene in the film, a poignant confessional that has him tearing up as he recalls running to the neighbors as a boy after she collapsed. Back at Pride's home, he then renders the evening even more of a downer by heavily suggesting she also inject the drug. When she refuses, there is a disturbing tone to his, "What if I insist?" He shoots up first, which makes her understandably less than reassured by his sudden bleached appearance and berserk anger management issues. She flees the scene, with him in hot pursuit. Cue 70s wah-wah jive on the soundtrack. The finding of a hooker's body the next day livens things up by ushering in the detective duo of O'Connor and Jackson, played by Milt Cogan and G2 Kumbuka. In real life, Cogan was a trained MD, known for his cop namesake in the long-running TV sitcom Barney Miller. The 6'5" Kumbuka built up an impressive resume, mainly of TV work from a challenged upbringing without the support of a Baptist minister father, who preached that acting was the devil's work. His Detective Jackson is presented as a sharply dressed man of self-respect in the black community, and yet his vocabulary veers from highly sophisticated words such as insalubrious to rough bursts of ebonics. Discovering the corpse, he tells Cogan, "Somebody has put some shit in the game, know what I mean?" His partner is as perplexed as us. In the office, after taking some heat on the phone, he slams down the receiver with a street hustler's "Jive ass sucker." Back on those streets, Silky the crap pimp still hasn't got the message that he's not cut out for this line of work. Replacing Linda with a white pro prompts a brief girl-on-girl catfight. "Who you callin' bitch, ho?" Before Pride turns up and uses kung fu and a car to effect a career change by running over his new employee and ramming Silky with it. To try to balance the vicarious thrill of seeing our vigilante hero sweeping the scum away, we see a brief split-personality inner struggle in front of his bathroom mirror a la Smeagol Gollum. Unsurprisingly, his commercially exploitative dark side wins out, despite Casey's quietly effective playing. This is real, and it's too late to change. Even Billy's threat to turn him in can't stop his confused vendetta born of a haunted childhood. The climax, where Pride captures Billy and is cornered by the police at Watts Towers, is well staged, and makes good use of aerial footage as he scales the tower solo. The deliberate homage to King Kong, though, is an uncomfortable racial issue, especially if too close a comparison is made between Kong and the Doctor's ape-like transformation. Regardless, Pride comes before a fall, and fall he does, in an impressive stunt dive off the tower. Released in 1976, Dr. Black, Mr. Hyde was the last gasp for blaxploitation as a viable economic movement for black advancement in the entertainment industry. There was never a question of black filmmakers lacking the talent so much as judgment. Whenever valiant bids were made in the genre to sew in subtle references to the modern black experience, all too often they were lost in favor of appealing to the lowest and widest denominator of paying audiences. Did anyone really register Pride's experiments as a metaphor for the US government's notorious covert syphilis testing on black college students in Tuskegee? But in solely celebrating primitive fun, ends up failing to do either very well. The admittedly terrific artwork of the poster campaign shows where the energy went instead. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe.